Okay, so now we're going to go over your homework assignment briefly. So what I did is I took a form, I adapted some elements of the Stevens Center for Innovation's invention disclosure form. So this is what I mentioned before, and Donaldson also mentioned if you were a faculty member, every time you have an invention, you need to disclose it on the SOPHIA portal. And then I also added some elements from the USC Coulter pre-proposal application form. So this is kind of a pilot funding grant for faculty, but I liked it because it gives you a little bit more structure in terms of what the project description should be. So just briefly, it'll have your name, the title of your project, the date the invention was conceived. So this could be today, or it could be sometime in the past if you've been thinking about this idea for a while. Then you'll have the project description and innovation components. So for Stevens, when you make an invention disclosure, you really just need a brief project description. And then you also would highlight some of the novel items or like what is the novelty or the novel features of your project. Um, However, I've taken the liberty, these specific questions and examples are from the Coulter application because I think they give you a little bit more structure for how to describe the project. And again, these are going to be pretty redundant with what you'll do for your business plan a little bit, and also what you'll talk about in your pitch. So hopefully this gives you a little more structure to start thinking through these issues. The total should be less than 1,000 words. 1,000 words is actually relatively long. I think it's about 3 pages or so, or 4. So you could do less than that. 500 words is fine as well. So the first one is the clinical problem. So what is the clinical problem or disease condition that you're addressing? The second one will be your current standard of care. So what's the current clinical practice and the case for the clinical need being unmet or underserved. Then you'll have a need statement. And so here's a concise statement about what the unmet medical need is. So just to give you an example from reInvent, our stroke brain-computer interface with virtual reality, we might say the clinical problem is that people with severe stroke don't have very many options for therapy. The current standard of care for these individuals includes like passive range of motion and electrical stimulation, but maybe nothing that they can really do on their own at home. Then we might say that the need is a more effective and engaging form of active therapy for people who have severe stroke. And maybe something that they could do at home on their own. So it gives them more agency and also allows them to engage in some sort of rehabilitative practice. Then you'll do the technology solution application or mode of action. So this is really the crux of the description. This is like, what is it that you're proposing to do? So is the solution a therapeutic, a device, a biomarker, other? In this case, because this is from the Coulter application, it could be like a drug, it could be a pharmaceutical, it could be a line, like a cell line, for instance. For most of you, it's going to be like a device or an app or some sort of product. But this is really where you'll describe it. I added 2 things which are in red, so this is not part of the Coulter, but I think these are really important. So the first is what evidence is there, if any, to support the idea. So for reInvent, for instance, we might say that there's evidence that shows that people with severe stroke and with chronic stroke can make improvements in their motor control, and that one of the best ways to do this is through repetition, and that previous research has shown that brain-computer interfaces do actually improve motor control for people with severe stroke. So just a few sentences to say that there is some evidence that what we want to use generally has been researched and should work. Then you'll do the novel features. And this is an item that actually comes from the Stevens form. So you'll have your description and then you'll have to itemize the novel features of your project description. So what's novel about this that distinguishes the invention from the state of the art? In this case, I added in OSOT since it is an OSOT class, and hopefully your inventions are relevant for OSOT. So for us, what I would say is like, we provide feedback, immersive feedback in virtual reality, whereas like other types of brain-computer interfaces for stroke provide it only on the screen. We also made it into a home-based system, whereas most systems require you to go into the lab. In terms of other novelty, like we have a modular kind of clinician interface. And we have different interfaces for the patient if using it at home versus the clinician. So you just want to like kind of list out what is novel and innovative about your idea. Then you'll just say the current stage of development. So it could be a concept only. It could be that you've built the prototype. It could be that you've built the whole thing and you already have a company. So something along those lines. And then these last two questions, you'll really talk about it a lot more in the next week for the business plan, but competitive landscape. So do you know of any similar or competing projects? And if so, why is your solution better? And what's your proposed activities? So for these, this goes kind of into some market research and your plan for the future. So how much time do you think you would need to make a prototype, and who do you think you would need to be involved in doing that? So just put like a brief sentence or two about each of these here. Then these items are from Stephen's disclosure form as well. So you would have your date of first public disclosure if applicable, and the circumstances. For us in research, it's mostly like, oh, we submitted a paper and it was published on this date. Or I gave a public talk about it and it was published on this date. And for your purposes, actually, in our class, it is a private setting. So it's not public disclosure if you talk about it in class. If you were to give a talk and put it on YouTube, though, then that would become public. So it's just who has access to the information. Then you could put some suggested keywords if you wanted to think about it. And then if you are the sole researcher, then you would just put sole researcher, or if there are other people, what they did, you would list that here. So this kind of combines two pieces, both the invention disclosure, as well as thinking through kind of how to describe your project and the usefulness of it. Like we mentioned before, this should be pretty useful for you if you do decide to apply to the Moschietti Award. It also should be useful for you in a document that you can return to and continually revise and change if you're going to use this project for your end final project. So hopefully it just gets you thinking and practicing, thinking about an innovation and concept in these terms. Okay. We look forward to seeing what you have to turn in, and we will discuss these in class when we're together on Thursday. Thanks.